Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, Bill Bennett is our guest. He's done a lot of things in audio, and now he's going to show us about disaster recovery for radio. It's pretty cool. Chris Tobin's with us, too. Coming up next on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. By Nautel, keeping you connected with your community with support and webinars. Online at nautel.com/webinars. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower. I'm Kirk Harnack here at the glorious Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee. And this is not only my home, my office, but it's also a place that Telos Alliance lets me play with a lot of gear and see what I can break and see what I can make work together. And so I really appreciate all that. You can see that we have Duro meters and Zip One and some other Telos Alliance gear like a Zip Stream and some look at this intercom gear right here, and then some nodes and an Ethernet switch. It's all cool. Someday we ought to do it. People have asked, would you give a tour of your office? Yeah, as soon as I clean it up. You see this space behind me here? This is the clean part right here behind me. So I've got to clean the rest of the office up, and then we'll do a tour. All right. Hey, we're going to look forward to a great TWiRT show. But first, I want to bring in my co-host who is lounging homelessly on a balcony in New York City. Hey, Chris Tobin, welcome in.
Well, I'm sheltering in place, enjoying the sunshine and a cup of red wine here. It's in a
oh, my gosh.
tumbler because I don't want to drop the glass or anything, so it's safer. It's a sippy cup.
That's right.
There we go. What better way to shelter in place than with some red wine, TWiRT, and Bill Bennett, who's coming up shortly as our guest. That's how I see it.
You've got, Chris, you've got some good-looking weather there, right? It looks a little windy, but otherwise nice.
Yes, so the wind just kicked up, actually. It's been pretty calm all afternoon. It's about 66 degrees. And it's just in time for the Nordic temperatures they're telling us. This coming weekend, we should expect temperatures in the morning in the 30s, then somewhere around the 40s throughout the day. So, 20-degree difference. I'm looking for.
So we're having a little bit of a chilly day here in Nashville. We had storms yesterday, but chilly day today, and it's going to be a beautiful day tomorrow with some rain tomorrow night. But let's get past all that. Hey, Chris, you and I have been talking recently on every show about different webinars that our friends at Nautel are doing, and I got to tell you, I've been really impressed with these. I sat in for a while today on their Looking Glass webinar that was earlier today. And they had the virtual NUG, the Nautel users group, the Looking Glass webinar, and they record these webinars, and there's many others available online too in their big webinar archive. They have a wide range of topics from SFN, that's Engineer Talk for Single Frequency Network. They have digital radio and product overviews to help, helpful how-tos on site safety, maintenance, extending transmitter life, and lots of Jeff Welton tips and tricks sessions. Now, all of the Nautel webinars, if you watch a whole webinar, you qualify for 1/2 of an SBE recertification credit. And to find these webinars, just go to the website nautel.com/webinars. Nautel.com/webinars. If you click the All button, it'll show you all of the past webinars. You can watch those, find one that suits your interest. Maybe you've got a technical need right now. And Chris, I'm a big fan of the SBE webinars. I got to tell you, these Nautel webinars are a really good source as well. What do you think about these things that Nautel is doing for us?
Oh, I think they're excellent. It was fun with the folks at Nautel, and I've had the pleasure of talking and meeting with several of them over the years, is they actually ask the questions to the customers. Okay, here's what we're thinking of doing. Will this be something you'd be interested in participating in by viewing, watching, attending? And a lot of times somebody's like, well, not really. They scratch it off the list. Okay, next. Let's try this. What about this? No, that's not going to work either. And they come up with a nice list of things that actually make sense, that serves the, what I like to call, what's in it for me question or statement.
Yeah.
And they do it well. And they're doing it much better than some of their competitors. And I have to applaud them for that. And I did watch today's Looking Glass webinar and the NUG webinar last week. So it was spot on. And they're not long-winded. An hour or less, and that's it. It's perfect.
I've been really impressed with Jeff Welton's stand-up set. So he's standing up in front of something. It looks pretty natural. I'm thinking about changing this set, or at least rearranging the camera so I can stand in front of this monitor, kind of like old days in front of the weather monitor, right? Doing weather on TV. That would be pretty. I'm going to play with that and see what I can make happen. Anyway, it's at nautel.com/webinars, and you will do yourself a favor as a broadcast engineer or just a broadcast engineering enthusiast to go watch some of these webinars. Okay, it's time to bring in our guest, and that is Bill Bennett from ENCO. Bill, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. Hi.
Kurt, it is my pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for the invite.
Well, you're welcome. You're coming to us from outside around the Pittsburgh area?
So I lived there until recently, but I am in Ann Arbor, Michigan right now. So.
Oh, that's right. Yep. That's right. Okay, but okay, yeah.
Yeah, but I do go back and forth quite a lot, so it's hard. I'm like Chris Tobin. You really never know which state and city I'm in. Just hopping around.
So we're going to be talking about disaster recovery, which of course is topical, but we're also going to be talking about maybe some long-term operating paradigm shifts, and you'll be introducing us to some technical ideas about that. You're also going to be right after our first break. We've got some disaster stories that you're going to kind of thrill us with, hey, this awful thing happened to this major broadcaster, this major radio station, and, what they suffered and what they did and what they had to do to get through that. But I wonder if you might tell us for just a moment, a little bit of your credentials. You've been in broadcasting for quite a while, but also in different kind of audio application jobs. So kind of give us a little overview of Bill Bennett and what your history is.
Yeah, thanks. Well, my background really is, from the radio standpoint, is production engineering. Right out of high school, I started at WJR Radio in Detroit, 50,000 watt AM station. Actually, that included a lot of mowing the lawn, right? A 40-acre field for a 710-foot stick. So, but you got to start someplace. It was a great station. And then I kind of evolved from that to doing production engineering, really venue management, technical management for 5 Olympics, including venue planning. I lived in Russia, for example, for 5 months doing final venue planning and build-out oversight for the outdoor venues in Sochi for what are called commentary systems, which is it's kind of a bit of a black art, but really when the world's television and radio rights holders show up to broadcast, most of them don't bring any equipment. Our job is to get there before them. We are part of the host broadcast group, Olympic Broadcasting Services, and we set up all of the equipment in all the venues and all the circuits. So they just show up and sit down and start talking, and then we kind of keep it running during the games. So.
You've got experience, and now with ENCO, your job has to do with media consulting management. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. Well, so ENCO's in a lot of different spaces, right? I mean, we started in broadcast. We're really strong there, and audiovisual space and corporate space. And so I bring my background in broadcasting and broadcast engineering to ENCO to help broaden the awareness of our products. In different areas, and especially a lot of unique little special projects and interesting kind of arcane things where there's not a patent solution for. We have to scratch our heads and come up with something custom. So.
Well, I knew Gene Novacek for years, and sadly he passed on some months back. But I was interested to hear that one of the early applications of an ENCO system was to control a fountain that danced to music, like one of these. Yes. I don't know if it's a mall fountain, indoor or outdoor, but I mean, what a cool application! That means you can control a lot of things, like all these nozzles in a fountain, right?
That's in, I believe that's in Muskegon, Michigan, Western Michigan, because really he started out in control systems and then grew that into focusing on the broadcast space. So, yeah.
Well, good deal. Well, we're going to hear about some disasters here in Control Freak. Yes, we're going to hear about some disasters here in just a second. Right now, I want to remind you about this amazing, cool thing from Angry Audio, and especially now when you may be operating out of different studios or home studios, makeshift studios. This is the Bluetooth gadget from Angry Audio, angryaudio.com. This will connect your phone to your broadcast equipment with professional XLR connectors on the back, both analog and AES outputs. And there you go. Beautiful web page showing all the different things here. And what I like is look at the picture on the top there, and that with the switch in the middle, it's BT pairing. You can easily put it in the pair position or hit the reset button. It's a two-way toggle switch, spring-loaded toggle switch. It's actually 3-position. So it's usually sits in the center. So it's easy, super easy for one of your announcers or talent to come in the studio. Maybe they got a different phone. Maybe they brought their iPad with them or some other tablet and they need to pair something. This is easy peasy for them to pair. They just hit the pair, switch it over to pair. It puts it in the pair mode and lets you start pairing your device with it via Bluetooth. Now, what else is cool about the Bluetooth gadget is that it's smart. It knows if you're going to play some media, like some music off of your Bluetooth device, maybe your phone, maybe you've got an interview that you did on it, or maybe you've got some music or some other recording that you just can't get any other way easily into your broadcast gear. When you pair it and play music from your phone, it does with high quality, a very high quality connection to the Bluetooth gadget. If, however, you want to use your phone and the gadget as like a phone hybrid to just carry a conversation on the air from your phone, well, it pairs that in the two-way connection with low latency and the appropriate audio quality for a phone call. So that's what's available in the Bluetooth gadget. It costs less than you think. Why don't you call a broadcast dealer or go to angryaudio.com, look there, and then call your favorite broadcast dealer and get you one, as Catfish says. Get you one. I want to remind you before we go with Angry Audio, you can get these for free. Get one, get 100 if you just order these. Order the adapter cables, the Studio Hub adapters. These are not Studio Hub style. These are real Studio Hub adapters. The real thing, made in the same factory. The Studio Hub always made them in the same people and the same molding procedures and stuff that's proven to work. For every one of these that you order, the ones that have the female RJ45, ask. You have to ask. But ask, tell them old Kirk Harnack and Chris Tobin sent you and get you a free shielded Cat 5 cable with the Studio Hub branding on it, made just for them to their specs, and you'll be happy with that and happy for free. Thanks a lot, Angry Audio, angryaudio.com, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, Kirk Harnack, Chris Tobin is here, and we're talking to Bill Bennett. Bill, I want to jump right into these disaster stories. You've got some amazing pictures and headlines. Why don't you just take it away and start telling the story about disasters?
Oh, boy, I could talk about this for an hour or 4. So, right. So, I mean, the whole concept about disaster recovery is how to recover or capitulate from a disaster. And disasters come in so many forms. You've got nature, you've got ransomware, you've got black hat hackers, you've got technology that breaks. You know about power supplies that fail, right? So I think it's not always something you can even begin to predict, especially these days. We're learning all kinds of new things that we didn't see coming. But if you go to the first slide, one example of a disaster, this is Mother Nature in a path that was predictable, but a 12 News in Beaumont, Texas.
Yeah, there we go.
Right. So they knew that they knew Tropical Storm Imelda was on the way, so they were able to move off to a sister station in Houston. But still, we have hurricanes, we have tornadoes, we have power outages, we have gas line breaks. I used to work at QVC in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and once when I was coming into work, there was a bunch of people outside, didn't know why. Well, it ends up they were all evacuated because there's a backhoe that literally hit the gas line entering the 200,000 square foot building.
Oh, wow.
So,
that was no small gas line, right? Because you had to keep all the QVC merchandise warm in the winter.
Yeah, luckily it was summer, if I recall. It was summer, fall, maybe.
Okay.
But yeah, seriously, there's a lot of people, 3,000 people in that building roughly at the time. And, you just can't predict all of these things. And then you've got power supplies that fail. You can have social engineering problems with employees that are disgruntled. So sometimes it's an inside job. Hackers are getting into, so many of us are aware of attachments. You don't click now, don't check, it's very easy to accidentally still do that. And very quickly, one station, Intercom, found out something like that can migrate through their network extremely fast. They're far from the only ones. So, more and more of these are affecting broadcasters too. A lot of the time it's still administrative, but more it's getting into the on-air side of things too, which is the ultimate disaster if you can't even use your playout system.
If you don't mind, let's take a look at slide number 2 here. I think we have some pictures that wow. So this is a ransomware attack here at KQED.
Yeah.
Oh, tell us about that.
Yeah, sure thing. A wonderful public radio station out of California. This was approximately 3 years ago. Somebody opened up a file and it migrated through their administrative computers, all kinds of computers crashing, the phone lines went dead, station files got encrypted, the mag doors, the prox card reader that you need to get through certain doors, all of that was shut down, so you couldn't get into certain doors because of the demand of Bitcoin. Yeah.
Oh,
can you imagine?
Gosh. Wait, so the card reader to get you in the back door, the front door, or even a lot of places have an engineering suite or rack room that's locked. I mean, you need a card key to go anywhere, or a prox card, as you call it, right?
Exactly, right. A card key, magnetics.
So the computer that ran that system was, I guess, on the same network and got its files encrypted too, huh?
That's what I understand. Yes, exactly. And
wow.
And so they were bribed for $27,000 total that at the time related to 1.7 Bitcoin per computer. They didn't pay, and nobody, I think, should pay for that. I mean, it just encourages it. But then they end up spending upwards of $475,000 for all kinds of new network protocols, safety procedures, and staff, full-time hires to just manage the security now. So the interesting thing there is their audio. Most of the audio was backed up in well, actually, a lot of the administrative files too were backed up on Amazon Web Services and Google Drive. Those in the cloud were safe. They'd lost some interviews, however, and their playout and automation stayed live, though, because that was a separate system, separate network. Thank goodness.
And I guess typically things that are in the cloud, and this is kind of what we're going to focus on a bit later in the show, things that are in the cloud aren't typically mapped as a drive, from a given computer. There's a program, a protocol that has to happen to transfer things to and from, or it goes over HTTP or TCP. In other words, it's not like a map network drive that is what you might say wormable, right? You can't just get out with normal Windows or other protocols to other shares that are on the network, and that's one reason why things in the cloud tend to stay safer. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you do start mapping drives, and we'll talk about our architecture later, it's through a secure VPN with software at both ends, screening what's going through. So, you've got to be smart about it, is what you've got to do.
What other disaster might we have to show about here?
Yeah, indeed. But wait, there's more. I mean, just briefly, large station groups with a lot of professional staff still can get hoodwinked by this. Town Square Media got hit. Entercom got hit. The virus replicated throughout their network, impacting music scheduling, production systems, telephones. I know that they've since installed more of a gateway between their production and administrative systems, but then that becomes a production bottleneck. So it gets harder to share content. If somebody emails you something that you need to use for on air, you've got to go through this particular gateway system. So, and remember barracks boxes. Right? The whole password problem that still is out there. There's a lot of barracks. Yeah. And go ahead. Just yesterday
in the pre-show conference, you and I were talking, and Chris, I'm sure you've done this too. Go to that website, shodan.io, SHODAN.io, and just do a search for your favorite brand of broadcast gear. And you're going to find examples of it online. Doesn't mean you can get to every one of them. It just means that it's pingable and identifiable. Although, while I was talking to Bill Bennett, I just looked at the first codec that I saw. I won't name any names. Already been named, I suppose. And I just got right into it. And I don't think it wasn't broadcast associated. It looked like something that was not broadcast, but it was, I don't know, maybe some music in a store somewhere. But yeah, you just got right into it. Default password. Yeah. So yeah.
And by the way, I go every Friday morning and have coffee, and I scroll through the different sites. It's fun. It's scary, some of the things that are still up there, and people are like, wait a minute, you should know better. This doesn't make any sense.
Chris, one thing I've noticed here is that some manufacturers, and my employer is starting to do this with its newer equipment, comes when you first log into it for the first time out of the box, it makes you change the password. Right then, right there, it makes you change the password. I use a password manager, so I can make it something complicated and with a high amount of entropy. But Chris, what do you think about that? Manufacturers making you change the password upon first use?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I've programmed Cisco routers and switches that force you to do that far out of the box as well.
Oh, that's right.
You have to, because there's a lot of. At the end of the day, if you're doing this for a living, you should know better. I worked at a place that, for some reason, the IT people, and they were treated with such high respect, and they were like the Olympus. They were the folks up on Olympus. That's how they were treated. And yet they would issue out the temporary passwords for people to get into their accounts. Password 123. I kid you not.
Oh.
And then they would tell you, oh, make sure you change it. I could tell you that for $100, I made lots of money. Nobody changed anything, and I got into a lot of things across the network. I'm like, really? You kidding me with this? And then there was the classic. Well, if we do static IPs, we'll minimize cyber issues. Really?
What?
So you're going to maintain a list of static IPs? You're going to keep track of all of them? Well, yeah. Okay. DHCP reservation, password changing every 45 days or something. That's not something that makes sense. Okay, never mind. Thank God I wasn't on Mount Olympus, because I would probably got shot by Zeus. But it was unbelievable, the things that go on. So you go to Shodan IO and you panic, because you're like, wait a minute, this shouldn't be happening at this level. And that's the part that's scary. Yeah. So yes, it's a good thing manufacturers are forcing you to change passwords.
And use two-factor if you can. Oh.
Yeah, two-factor would be very handy. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, although I guess, Bill, two-factor is generally not available for pieces of broadcast equipment, hardware things. But certainly it's available for your email, your Amazon login, all these kinds of things. Bill, go ahead and continue with your disaster talk here.
Well, yeah, disaster talk. Another interesting thing, a lot of the research that I have been doing on this topic introduced me to cities and municipalities and states, not broadcasters, but a lot of cities that have even a lower technology amount of support for them, where they are even more open to vulnerabilities. And one was a community of towns, or a series of towns in Texas, that all shared the same IT firm that did their outsourced support for them. Well, that IT firm had a hole. They opened up a virus, and because they had access to those different municipality systems, the virus replicated through that third-party consultant or IT firm to these cities and towns. So even if you may be perfectly safe in your secure network for a lot of this, but if your technology partners, whether they be an IT firm or outside collaborators in any way, if they've got a hole, then they could be bringing a virus into you as another vector. So
wow, that's a vector that I hadn't thought of. That of course you might expect that from employees that are VPNing in, road warriors VPNing in, that kind of thing. So they don't have to be physically in the place to help a virus or ransomware get in. But your IT consulting firm, oh my gosh,
yeah,
I guess they were fired.
I don't know what happened to them. I hope it's a rare chance that something like that can happen, because you should be able to trust them most. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the best thing groups can do is just isolate each of their business units. That's you can have, just like that town, you have all the different people, different businesses. They should just be their own little island of operations, and there's no way to get across the bridge. That approach. Because I worked at a broadcast group. We many years ago, when one of the first viruses hit one of the broadcast groups, and we discovered that we had a little bit of a problem. Everything was wide open. So we quickly sat down and made up a plan and said, okay, each business unit, each market will be independent. So we had a bunch of little islands within the group, and the next time a breakout occurred, a virus hit, oddly enough, only one of the 12 business units got crippled, because it was contained. And that approach, I have to say, I've been using with a friend of mine for some broadcast projects we've had, and it's worked. It's worked really well. Learn how to do VLANs, take full advantage of VLANs, take full advantage of VPN routing. So not just a VPN connection, and then all of a sudden I can get to anywhere. You dictate what IP traffic can do, and that'll help minimize. I'm not saying it eliminates, but it minimizes. And I know the folks
and locking down the MAC
suggest
addresses
that a lot with their and I know the folks at ENCO suggest that a lot with some of their larger network installations.
So in a few minutes, we're going to be talking about some of the ways to help eliminate the possibility of this happening with a disaster recovery plan. Bill, what other, are there any examples or advice you have right now concerning people who suffer from a disaster? And by the way, it doesn't have to be a malware disaster that we are planning for. We're in the middle of a pandemic right now that has forced people to change the way that they operate. And in fact, we probably ought to have Chris, if you don't mind, in just a moment or two we have before our next break, Chris, why don't you remind us what you did at your radio station since you couldn't have people come into the studio for a while here. What are you guys doing at WBGO?
Well, essentially, we have set up a VPN server, and our announcers are doing voice tracking from the field from their homes, basically, or wherever they wind up. Each of the laptops have got their own ID. They've got a few restrictions built into them, and they just the VPN in, drop in the voice tracks, do what they have to do, and they get out. If they forget to log out or say inactivity, they will be logged out automatically on behalf. So there's nobody being left in because they forgot. They walked away. The dog's barking, or the kids are screaming. So we rotate through to make sure the connections get dropped after a certain amount of time. We've also implemented a couple other procedures, and it all involves VPN encryption, and the business department has its own set, its own group of access. So everybody has a different level. I guess I should say it's a tiered access approach, or in the world of, controlled access. But it helps minimize. And do not think it eliminates. Do not think I do not have sleepless nights at times. But at least everybody has the same laptop, so I know what model it is. So if there's a trouble, I know what to do. I don't have to ask them, what do you got? What does it look like? Tell me what buttons are lighting up. We did that. We made everything the same along the lines of whatever we're doing, everybody's got the same things we know, so we can lock it down accordingly. If I have to remote in, we have remote access to all the machines in various ways, so I can help somebody if they're in a panic. You're not in your comfort zone when you're sitting at home trying to do business reports for the for the CEO. It's like, I think I got this right. I'm not sure. Something's wrong. It's not working the way it should be. All right, calm down. Let me remote in. I see what you're doing. No problem. We got it. We're done. And the fact that everybody's got the same platform makes it easy for me to help things along. So it's been good. But we've been functioning. Actually, we've learned a few things, and looking forward to getting back to operations where we can start taking advantage of what we've learned. We're going to leverage some of the good stuff. This is actually. It's no longer, well, it would be nice if we could do that, but how do we know it's going to work? We can now say it does work.
So, and I don't know how much you want to reveal, but I recall that your strategy for continuing operations was to put your automation system at the transmitter site where it was secure and you have access to it, whereas you may experience difficulty in traveling over to the studio location.
Well, yes, we were thinking of, if the studio has to be vacated, which we still have people coming through, but not a full staff, but there are still people passing through, and we do have security and whatnot. But what if? We sit there and you go, what if? And the programming folks and the CEO were like, what can we? And I said, well, what if we just stick it here at the transmitter site where I can get access to, which I know in order to get access from outside, anybody getting through has to get through 4 levels of security. So I'm like, probably a better place, and we have access to 1, 2, 3 levels of internet connectivity. So if something should go wrong, we've got 2 backups to that. We've got access to a few things. So we shifted everything, and we're voice tracking, automation, doing everything. NPR News is coming through that facility, and part of it goes through the studios and comes back up to the transmitter. So I'm using both locations in a very interesting hybrid approach, and it's actually working very well. And programming folks are excited because when we get back to our operation, we're going to take advantage of some of the things we've learned, and I think it's going to be good for us.
What I think is kind of intriguing is you turned a transmitter site that's in a really good location with great services. You kind of turned that into a mini data center for your purposes to keep you guys on the air. And in coming up, Bill Bennett is going to talk about some, I guess, more traditional strategies, but also how the company he works for, ENCO, recommends taking care of this. So, Bill, stand by. We're talking to Bill Bennett with ENCO. He's been an audio guy, production guy, and has handled some really interesting network operations for quite some years and has a lot of experience in this. You're watching or listening to This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about all kinds of things that have to do with broadcasting. And this week we're talking about disaster recovery and continuing operations after that with Bill Bennett, and Chris Tobin is here as well. Hey, our show is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcasters General Store. The website, it's easy. It's bgs.cc. bgs.cc. And Broadcast General Store represents, all your favorite manufacturers. One of those is Broadcast Tools. If you know Broadcast Tools, you know how effective their equipment is. Man, I've used a lot of their boxes over the years to control satellite receivers, silent sensors, do all kinds of things, and it's really efficient gear. Well, you ought to check out the efficiency of this little console that Broadcast Tools makes. It's called the ProMix 4. The ProMix 4, look at that. That's it right there, the ProMix 4. Now, this is an interesting little console. Why? Well, first of all, interestingly, it's mono. It's not stereo. It's a mono console. So it's meant to get out somewhere and get your voice and the voice of other people on the air. It has 3 mic line inputs on it, and they're on the back. And you can see they're those cool connectors that take either a XLR connector or a 1/4-inch tip ring sleeve connector. It also has headphone jacks built right in on tip ring sleeve connectors. It has a mic tally connector on the back, so you can give a tally output, program output on XLR. It also has a USB connection, so you can hook it up to your laptop computer or a desktop, and it just acts like a USB sound card device. So that is really cool. You can really get the effectiveness and power of using your laptop to connect back to the station through, codecs or various remote connection services. You can even use something like Lucy Live or Skype or whatever you want to connect audio back to where you're going. You could even have a soft phone dialer on your laptop and connect it back to things back at the studio using G722. So lots of possibilities there. It has one mono balanced output. It has a mix minus output, so that's convenient. You can hook it right up to a device like a telephone hybrid or an external codec if you want to. That works well. It has IFB audio input with level adjustment, a full duplex talkback capability. It has, by the way, you can use this with the ProMix Hub 6 controller. That's sold separately. Has an on-air, as I mentioned, on-air tally warning light relay output. You can combine it with another ProMix 4 and or a ProMix 1 units with the ProMix Hub 6 and just Cat 5 cable. So what I'm saying is you can expand the capabilities of this box a lot just with some Cat 5 cables and buying these other boxes. And it can drive multiple AHR 1 plus headphone systems, all from Broadcast Tools. You got to check this thing out. It makes a great, quick remote broadcast, live remotes. Hey, election coverage, that's coming up this fall. Plenty of other, of primaries and other things to cover. If you need to have several people talking together at a remote site, this is a great box to do that. Yeah, you're gonna want to look into it. And all you got to do is call your friends at Broadcasters General Store. I gave you the phone number off the top of my head. It's 352-622-7700. It's 352-622-7700, or go to bgs.cc and you can place your orders there. You can get the phone number if you forget it. So check that out if you would. And I got to tell you, Broadcast General Store, they are set up to talk to you on the phone. You want to talk to a friendly voice on the phone? Yeah, you can do it with BGS, Broadcasters General Store. Thanks a lot for sponsoring the show, and the Don Wingett at Broadcast Tools for designing and producing the ProMix 4. All right, it's This Week in Radio Tech, our 492nd episode. Bill Bennett is with us from ENCO. Chris Tobin is with us as well. And Bill and Chris, we're going to be talking now about some of the solutions for disaster recovery and what those solutions look like technically, because we had some charts to look at as well. Bill, how would you lead us into this part of the discussion?
Okay, well, cool. So first, I might just kind of do a recap to remind everybody where we are these days with what's in the studios. I mean, everything's on a computer, so there's vulnerabilities and benefits from that. A lot of benefits these days when everyone's, remote broadcasting from their homes and in the field. But you may be backing up your systems to a SneakerNet solution or a RAID drive array in the studio. Maybe even ideally doing batch backups to the cloud, which is definitely the better idea. I think we're obviously talking about the cloud here because cloud providers, Amazon, Google, Microsoft Azure, they've all gotten so scalable and reliable that I like to ask people, do you know where your email is anymore? If I do this at an SBE meeting, there's always somebody there who knows exactly where their server is. It's in their basement, or under their desk. But generally, we don't know because it's virtualized across data centers, whichever the provider, and we don't even know where it is. It just works. Thank goodness these days it really just works. And these days, with so many people videoing from home, all these distributed systems, they're holding up pretty darn good. So we think it's time you can trust the cloud. You're maybe not relying on 100%. Maybe you've got some needs for something in the studio too. But and by the way, as we branch to the cloud, don't forget you need an ISP. And then Kirk, like we were talking yesterday, let's go with 2 ISPs because you could have any kind of issue can happen with network configurations and backhoes and what have you. So ideally, you have 2 to your station. Cloud services generally themselves have significant data to different parts of the internet backbone. So you don't have to worry about them as much, but your own station and maybe your transmitter, ideally you're both, you have both dual paths. So
I want to riff on that for just a second, Bill, because as I think, at least for my broadcast operations, I think moving some of our infrastructure to the cloud is going to be a good thing because I know what we have now. Lots of computers in several racks in Cleveland, Mississippi, Greenville, Mississippi. These are 7-hour drive from my house, and small town stations. We can't afford a full-time engineer or IT person there. So I'm responsible for a lot of it remotely. We do have another guy that works on it remotely as well. But my point is that moving infrastructure to the cloud is not a panacea. But you do have some assurances of keeping the gear working, whether you're in, because you're probably going to be in virtual machines. But having multiple internet connections or having reliable internet connection, and that's probably going to mean having more than one, becomes important. Now, I want to go back to Chris Tobin because, Chris, you mentioned that at your DR site, which happens to be the same thing as your transmitter site right now, that you have more than one source of internet there. And we know that it's really unlikely for 2 internet providers to go down at the same time, unless they're sharing the same backbone that's coming in the same way. So, Chris, talk to us for just a second about multiple sources of internet and how you do that and how it's working out for you.
Well, we have our traditional T1 for the audio STL and a little bit of data across that for the Burke unit. And then the 2 ISPs are coming in on 2 separate fiber runs, 2 separate fiber companies through 2 separate physical paths into the building. And they also are, we're at that point of presence, so it's even better. We're at that backbone. We're right at the pop. So, and everything they do is through microwave point-to-point throughout the city. So all the connectivity is through divergent paths, battery backup. It's I think currently on an 8-hour battery backup. So if we lose power for any reason, the generators come on, their system stays functioning, and we move along seamlessly. It's very nice. But the nice thing is the building we're in. So this is for for many broadcasters, people overlook this. And I remember for years talking to folks about multiple entry points to your building. I'm not talking about the one pipe that has 6 different sleeves in it coming into the building on the northwest corner. I'm talking about physical northwest corner entry, southwest or southeast entry, and then the companies that you're working with either create a sonnet ring in and out, or you have separate companies coming in to those points and coming up to you through different parts of the building. So or what we call now data closets. So the nice thing is where I'm located, data closets, there are 2. They run the length of the building, so you have 2 different ways up the building. So on either end of the floors, in the event of a problem, there's a good chance one side might be in trouble, but the other side won't be. And that's the redundancy and the forward thinking we tried to do and make it. That's why I figured, well, why not make that our little mini data center for the moment? I mean, we do have cloud services for business office applications and stuff, but at the moment we like to keep the broadcast with us because what we do is very unique. We're a music station. It's very different than most stations. So cloud services and that type of stuff is not something we can easily go with just yet. But down the road, probably consider it.
And I do think even in rural Mississippi, at some of my stations, we're able to get two sources of connectivity, IP connectivity to our transmitter sites. And this is kind of a new thing. And if you can use a combination of shooting it yourself over an IP radio, maybe a wireless ISP, and maybe eventually fiber goes by your transmitter site, or some other methodology gets there, or even satellite internet can work for you in a pinch. Let's get back to Bill Bennett. And Bill, we got a couple of slides that I want to make sure we look at here as soon as possible. What do we want to take a look at with your solutions?
So the next slide is your, I think it's number 4. Yep, that's it. Great. So I'll talk a little bit about ENCO for a moment. I mean, those who are used to the product name being DAD, Digital Audio Delivery, our flagship radio automation and playout system. Our goal behind making this a redundant cloud-based kind of solution is creating, first of all, a product that we call DAD DR, aptly named for disaster recovery. You have at the station your main DAD system that you're using for playout day to day. Then you have a cloud component running on a virtual machine. Could be at Amazon, could again Microsoft, what have you. And you then install at the station what we call our gateway product. That is a piece of software middleware designed to keep DAD instances in perfect sync across networks, right? So that is a natural product to link your DAD system at your station to the DAD DR system in the cloud. And that is giving you constant connectivity between the two, your on-air system at the studio and your web DAD product in the cloud. And that's the other thing, is this really cool aspect of this is not just the synchronization from the gateway device or middleware, but also the web DAD environment, which is a really slick HTML5 compliant web GUI interactive kind of layer that we've built onto DAD now, that allows you to control DAD via website or smartphone or tablet, instead of having to just use a simple, the application just on one computer. You can therefore access a virtual instance of it in the cloud with the WebDAD product. So it takes a lot of little pieces of tools to have to piece together, and those are therefore the pieces we've architected to do that. And what you get is your playlist, your content, your log files. They are all replicated in real time between your station and the cloud seamlessly, and you can pull or push between the two if you need to, because eventually if you have to go to the cloud for a disaster playout, you're eventually going to go back to the studio and you're going to want to pull back those log files and synchronize them, right? So it's designed to go both directions, because you got to have your as runs, right? Because you got to know if that ad played. There's a layer that we're using here. Chris was, of course, talking about how they're using secure VPN at his station. That's a necessary component for what we are using as well. We're actually mapping drives at both ends going through VPN, but the gateway application, our product, is screening and limiting the types of files that can go between. So no, you can't back up an executable from your station to the cloud. So if there's a virus on an executable or batch file or something you've got at the station, it's not going to go to the cloud. It's very surgical as far as that. It's not a copy of the OS. It's very specific. And so that's kind of the first half of that, right? Because that's getting your play out, and WebDAD being the interface that's hosted in the cloud. We'll get to that next, because let's say you do have to leave your station. Let's say you do have that gas line leak and everybody runs out. Well, you can go to the nearby Starbucks, maybe not the one that's next door, right? Because you still got that gas leak thing going on. So go to the one a block away. And then you can log in remotely. There's a couple pieces here that come into play next. You need to have an IP connection to your transmitter. That's very common that we're finding, and most stations now have some sort of backup with an IP link for audio to their tower. So you need that, because what you're going to do is go to your transmitter and redirect its source from, let's say, your STL or whatever you've got normally bringing you on the air to your tower. You're going to switch that to your IP feed, and you're going to route audio from your playout system to that IP feed from the cloud. And there's just a couple of config files you have to manually change. Very quickly, you're redirecting audio to your IP stream to your tower from your playout system in the cloud while the same song is playing, for example. So,
So as we talked yesterday, there are several different models that are coming into use for people to get audio from a cloud-based playout system to the transmitter side, and you guys are sending a stream, a private stream, or I guess you could pick up a public stream. There are transmitters on the market now. There's audio processors on the market that, as one of their audio sources, can be a stream from the internet. So one
Indeed.
could, for example, I happen to know I believe the Omnia 9 processor. You can choose, the analog input, the AES input, or an RTP input, so you can stream to it. So these are definitely possibilities to change the input on an audio processor. There's other ways to do that too. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, keep going. I don't want to interrupt. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Well,
so
there's other ways to get this. Sorry about the delay. There's other ways to get this done too, including sending the whole MPX signal over IP and making a switch into what end, where it's being sent from. You can even put your audio processing now in the cloud. That's a possibility. Some folks have been selling that for some time. So there's different ways to get this done, even with RDS built into it. So there's ways to really do this, almost the same thing you're doing now from the studio, and have it come from the cloud. Live operations are a little bit more touchy. It so happens that my employer has some ways to get that done right now. But for a lot of folks, a disaster recovery plan would include voice tracking or just-in-time voice tracking to play out from the cloud. Go ahead with what you're saying before I interrupted.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Well, so there's you scratch the surface. There's actually a little bit of a more interesting layer behind this. We've collaborated before with the Stream guys in several cases, and have a great relationship with them, with our company and theirs. And so working with them, there's and also a product you certainly know well, a Telos product, the ZipStream 9X2. What happens is at the cloud. So how do you get that stream? How do you get your audio to? You've got some places to take it to, right? You've got to get it to your transmitter. You've got to get it to your CDN for your streaming. You've got no doubt a streaming provider that you'll want to keep going. You may have a laptop someplace at that Starbucks that is allowing you to monitor this audio stream back to see how it's working, how it sounds. And these are possibly all different formats, different codecs, different processing. So the Telos ZipStream product is a nice piece of software-only middleware that you can run in the cloud, that can then you get at the audio from your playout system from WebDAD and DAD, and then it will send these stems out to your transmitter, your monitor station, your CDN. And actually, what you're looking at there is the interfaces for some of the WebDAD interfaces that we've built out, and those are just screenshots of a Chrome web browser. So
now these look a little bit different. Yeah, those look a little bit different. Let's go back to that slide. They look a little bit different than the usual ENCO DAD interface, but this is the HTML5 version of ENCO. Is that right?
That is exactly right. Yep.
Okay.
If you have a browser that's HTML5 compliant, you can run this. This is not running on an application that's connecting back to the server directly. So we have playlists. You can edit playlists, and it still supports mini arrays. Like I said, voice tracking. Most of the popular features that the DAD product has is built into WebDAD, and we keep evolving it, of course. So,
this means that if we just explore that a bit more, that the ENCO DAD, the disaster recovery, the DR that's running in the cloud. With proper credentials and maybe a VPN, I'm just log into that, and I can run the whole thing on my screen, including voice tracking. So I can essentially put production up there. Oh yeah, here's the disaster.
That's a good slide.
Talk about this slide.
Yeah, this is just, again, a little bit more of a scratch of the surface to the way this diagram is laid out. Is at the top is what's in your data center. Again, showing the DAD system running there, the WebDAD, and also the ZipStream middleware, right? And then connecting to the cloud. On your left, you have your IP feed with your audio stream to your transmitter, and on the right side, that's also through the cloud going to your laptop where you're controlling this from. And that's also where you can do the voice tracking from, right? You could cut these short, long, whatever interstitials and upload them into your playlist dynamically on the fly as you go.
So let's say that I know nothing about arranging for cloud services, and actually I don't.
Mm.
Some of my colleagues know all about this, but can ENCO, or how do I arrange to even get this stuff into a cloud? What is this, Amazon Web Services or a private data center? What are we talking about?
So we do have this running right now on Amazon Web Services, but it's what really matters is that you have a virtualization of the operating system, right? Because there's a lot of these really great carrier class data centers. So if you're a company that has a preference for, Microsoft Azure or Google, and there's a lot of other smaller, reliable ISPs or data centers out there, we just need an instance to put this on and run it, right? So. And that's the cool thing about virtual machines is that it's still running in the operating system you rely on. It's just you're just sharing it with a bunch of other people, and that works out pretty good.
So if I wanted to implement this, I talked to somebody at ENCO, and you guys helped me get the right people at a data center to. I mean, let's say I know really nothing about this. Okay.
Yeah, because a lot of this depends on our great relationship with the stream guys, though, right? And so because they've done a lot to help us understand navigating of streams and CDN connectivity and in that complexity that even I don't, I'm talking from a perspective of knowing how this works, but there's a lot of little detail in there that takes some time to figure out. So we do kind of package all that together for the customer and make it a one-stop solution. Yeah,
you mentioned a moment ago. You mentioned Telos's streaming encoder, the 9x2. So that's also running in the cloud because it runs on Windows. Doesn't matter if it's in the next room or if it's running in the cloud. So that's the way the audio gets out, and that's up in the cloud. So you can get audio, as you mentioned, to your CDN and to your transmitter side, and also you can get a less buffered version, like listening through your CDN, you might be looking at 20, 30 seconds worth of buffering. But I know from my own radio stations, I can listen directly and I get a much, much lower amount of buffering, maybe half a second or so for my purposes. So I can listen.
That's exactly right. Right. Okay. Because you need that surgical precision of hearing it close to real time, as close as possible to like a VLC player or something like that. If you're the engineer wanting to see how or hear how it's going on the air, CDN can take a little more time and that's okay. So, it's a pretty neat product. I have to say that's a really neat Telos product there.
I'd like to show the slide we just showed. I'd like to show that again and get Chris's comments or thoughts on this. This is not the last slide, but I think it's the second to last slide in the whole deck. That one. No, not that one. Yeah, that one. So, Chris, you want to comment on this and maybe how it's different from what you've put in place, or what do you think about the setup?
Well, yeah, no, what I've put in place is very different. It's more point to point. The only thing is we do have people remoting in. So, I'm the cloud, if you want to call it that, at the moment. My cloud for our operation, which is fine. But again, workflows dictate the application, dictate how you need to do things. But this arrangement makes total sense. And what's nice is that you can operate in such a way that you can, if there is a gas leak or a flood in the building or something happens, you could just make a call to somebody who's off site, or you may have a plan already in place, and you can contact one of your announcers and say, okay, listen, we're going off site. You're going to activate your little laptop, and off you go. And that's what you want. That's how it's supposed to work. It's any disaster recovery plan, you do any emergency operations management. I've worked with EOM facilities. The plan has always been, okay, what do we do? What if? Okay, let's implement it. What do you mean? We're going to call somebody and we're going to say we're doing this now. And just that's it, now. No, we're not planning it now. When I was at the AT&T GNOC, their Global Network Operations Center in New Jersey, they have two of them. I can only tell you about the one that I was in. Can't say anything about the other location. But I will tell you that I had an opportunity to go to this facility, sit there in this large, it's like just like you see in the movies, this large conference room with a huge glass windows overlooking the floor of desks and computer monitors and a huge map of the world on the wall with lights showing data traffic flow and everything else. And the person showing us around says, oh, you're lucky. You're here today. Today's one of our random days. I'm like, random days? Yeah, today's the day we just make the announcement. We're switching. We just hit a button and the light goes on in everyone's console. They know what that means, that they've just lost connectivity at their desk and we're now switching to the alternate site. and certain key people will get up and leave and head over. And I kid you not, like clockwork, I just watch it like, well, look at that. Network operations did not stop. Somebody made an announcement. We have control at Site B. Site A is now offline. Everyone's looking around going, okay. And that's it. It was like less than 15 seconds. And there were people designated to get up and head over to the other site to make sure that everything is functioning and take control.
Yeah.
Full control. I mean, right now it's automated. But that's the beauty of the cloud concept, if you design it that way. If you just do a cookie cutter,
Right.
we're doing this, let's plug it in and go, you're not going to have what you should. And I think what Bill is showing, what ENCO has thought through is, hey, here's what you have. Here are the pieces that you should be looking at. Here's how you can make it work for you. And at the end of the day, we're using HTML5, so it makes it even easier. You don't have to run about an application and go, oh, Bob's got the laptop, but he doesn't have the current version of software. Yeah, we're not going on there today. You laugh, but I guarantee you there's at least 3 dozen people in the audience just going, yeah, we were there a couple of times this week. So that's how you have to look at this. Maybe make part of your transmitter site a cloud, a small cloud to the intermediate, to the larger cloud, or maybe you need to look at it from different perspectives, and that's the key. It's the what-if scenario, as everyone always talks about, and at the end of the day, how do I preserve what we do? Because it's got to be as close to what you're accustomed to. Otherwise, your staffers, and I'm talking from the announcers through news, sports, business office, production personnel, if they have to operate in an environment that they're not familiar with, you are dead. Your disaster recovery means nothing. You just lost all your money. Think about it. So if you're a production guy who gets a phone call, Bob, don't bother coming in. We're vacating the building. There's been a water main break. You're going to have to work from home. Okay, yeah, no problem. Fires up his Pro Tools, whatever he's got. He logs into some server setup, and he starts producing stuff. Keeps to his schedule. He's happy. Business office, hey, Jack, we're shutting down the building because of X. Can you work from home? Yeah, no problem. I can log into the business software servers, and we can do invoicing, e-billing. We'll be fine. That is what you need to be able to do. And what ENCO's offering on the the radio side, we'll call it, right, the broadcast revenue side, is the ability to be, hey, okay, so we got to move out of the building today. So what?
Yeah,
I've realized doing everything online isn't necessarily exactly a panacea, but I remember the days when I ran my business with QuickBooks, right? Financially, I would do invoicing and keep track of all the the double entry accounting, everything with QuickBooks. And I had to buy and install on my computer. And if the computer hard drive died, which it did, it's all different. But nowadays, I use one of those online services to do invoicing, to keep track of the finances of this podcast, for example, and my own engineering finances. And my goodness, it just works. It works really well. And I'd love to see some more broadcasts move to that. Bill, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Get a word in edgewise, and then we're gonna take a quick break and come back with some tips. What was your last thought you'd like to?
Oh, no problem. No, I appreciate it. Chris actually made me think about the fact that, of course, a lot of broadcasters, station groups, what have you, they may already have their own data centers, or like what Chris has at his transmitter. You don't need to put this in. What we're talking about is not something you have to put in an Amazon Web Service or some large scale cloud service. You can have your own backup servers within your own network. You just have to be able to rely on it and get to it, ideally with a couple of pathways, literally, like Chris said, at different corners of a building kind of thing, different fibers, different trunks, even if you can. So, it's just software. It just depends on where you want to run it.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I should clarify. I didn't mean to say that you have to do cloud services off-site. I can tell you I've worked for several broadcast companies over the years where we built our own data centers and built it with robustness like somebody off-site. Mm-hmm. And we did do it physically off-site, and we maintained it. And, again, it's a question of cost per benefit. You look at it and say, what's going to cost us to maintain it, do it, and what do we get out of it? And that's the business equation you have to look at. So don't get me wrong. Everything in the ENCO product, what you saw looking at that diagram, does not have to be a major cloud service. You could be the cloud service, but just think of it in terms of how do I protect, how do I continue what we normally are accustomed to, so that the revenue stream continues, even though we're scattered at the moment. And that's what you have to really think about. And it comes down to ROI and the cost benefit. If you can do it and say, gee, if it's only going to cost us extra $300 a month, then maybe it's worth it, because we can make twice that in the first hour, maybe the first 30 minutes. Oh, there we go. The numbers are working. But the key is ENCO's offering a tool. And that's what you want. The toolbox has to have the right tools to get the job done when it's called on. That's all.
You are watching or listening to This Week in Radio Tech. It's our 492nd episode. Bill Bennett's our guest with ENCO. And Bill and Chris are going to come back. And I'm telling you, they're each going to have a tip of the week for you. And you don't want to miss that. So hang on, hang tight. I'm here to tell you about, or I'm here to open up this box. See, I've put a little sticker on here, a sign that says Max Connect Wireless on this this good old ammo box. It's one of those inexpensive ammo boxes from Harbor Freight. Let's open it up, and inside, look. I think you probably knew what was coming out if you ever watched the show. A Max Connect Wireless enabled modem. Now, this is a data modem from Cradlepoint. Yeah, they're available off the shelf. Doesn't have to be a Cradlepoint one. What's key is what's behind this little door right here. This little door has 2 SIM cards in there, and they are both from Max Connect Wireless. These SIM cards, yeah, they connect to 4G networks. Mine connects to AT&T or Verizon, but also Sprint is available. And if you're in Canada, they're going to be opening that up to I think, Rogers. But anyway, what's special about them, it's not just any ordinary 4G data. It's a higher level of priority. You can be in a busy situation, and you can even be in a football stadium. Well, okay, right now there's nobody in there, but you know what I mean. You can be in a crowded location where people are using their phones all around you, and your data rate on your phone could really get bad. You can drop a lot of packets. Your broadcast starts going bad. Hey, years ago, I set up a Telos Zip 1 at a trade show in Miami, and it worked great Sunday night. Great with a 4G modem that I had. But when I came in Monday morning, when all the other workers were downtown in the office buildings and I tried to get a connection, the data rate was just terrible. And in some ways it's better these days. In some ways it's not. Max Connect Wireless will make sure your data gets through because you have a priority ahead of all those other people that are out there using their phones. So get Max Connect Wireless. You will be connected. As long as you've got a 4G signal, you're going to get connected with a static IP address. Now, broadcasters all over the U.S. are using these from Max Connect Wireless. It's a funny spelling. If you want to look at our show notes and get the spelling or remember it here, it's MAXX with a K then, maxconnectwireless.com. And talk to Josh Bone or one of his people about getting yourself Max Connect Wireless. You put this at the transmitter site, and now you've got connectivity, reliable connectivity to the transmitter site, or as a backup. Take it to your remote locations. Chris and I have done this very show with Max Connect Wireless modems. Chris is involved with another show that does regular video casts from remote locations using Max Connect Wireless. And Josh Bone has put literally hundreds of these at major broadcasters all across the country. What are you waiting for? Get yourself a Max Connect Wireless. You've got reliable IP connectivity with any of several carriers, and so that means your broadcast can happen. That sale, that remote that you sold, that can continue to happen and happen reliably, or getting to the transmitter site for data or for audio with Max Connect Wireless. Check it out, maxconnectwireless.com. Thanks a lot, Josh Bone and Max Connect Wireless, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Okay, let's check with Bill Bennett. Bill, can you have a tip of the week for our listeners?
I actually said this earlier in our broadcast today, but I'm going to say it as a tip, really official now. Use two-factor authentication wherever you can. Doesn't work with every system, no doubt, but it's secure, as many steps as is practical, your access to your networks and data from the bad guys.
And, a lot of places that offer two-factor authentication, you can also set up some one-time passwords.
Yeah,
I was doing this. With Gmail. In fact, just to add to your tip, and thank you for that. I believe in it. Very, very. My most secure things that I need for nobody to ever get control of, like my Gmail, two-factor authentication, and for example, Facebook, two-factor authentication. But I noticed that with Gmail, if you've got a device, and I'll make this my tip to go along with yours, Bill. If you have some device that you want that is capable of sending an email, a convenient way to do that is through Gmail, and they've got this thing called application passwords. Application passwords. It's a little hard to find in the Gmail setup, but if you Google application passwords, you can make an account. even if you're not a regular Gmail user, make yourself an account for your devices to use. Maybe you've got a printer that's going to email you. Maybe you've got some software that runs on a computer that when something goes wrong, it's going to send you an email. Make you an account for that, and then go and find application passwords. And this is a really secure way to let a device use this special password and send information through there. And you're not at risk of somebody getting into that device and finding out what your Gmail password is. It's a password that actually only works from that device. They've got some ways to set that up and make it work, but I've come to play with this here lately. We had actually a printer that we just couldn't get it to work through Gmail or through another mail provider. And so somebody said, hey, try the application passwords from Gmail, and that solved the problem. And now we're using it on several different things around our broadcast plant. So good advice. You can also get one-time passwords. You can actually keep them on a list, put them in a text note for a secure note for yourself. If you have to get into something that the password's gone wacky, use a one-time password. Bill, good idea. Thank you for that two-factor authentication reminder.
Thanks, Kirk.
Chris, how about you?
That was good. It was good. Well, in these times that we're in right now, we have a lot of crazy stuff going on. So my portable kit right now is a power supply, my lightning cable, and a battery for my phone. Because you never know where you may wind up. And these days, you just can't plug into a kiosk or some subway outlet, whatever you like. People do that, but right now it's not advisable. And the other thing I got to remind everyone is keep track of what you're doing. The other day I got a call about something. We had a problem with one of our VPN links. And it was so nice to be able to, look at that. I look it up exactly what I need. Oh, yeah, your password ID is this one. You have the wrong information. Done. I could have used my iPad, which it's backed up on, but I was out on the street. I'm not about to pull the iPad out, start scrolling through and look for it. That was real quick in my bag. Open it up right to the page. I have all my stuff, and off we go. I say this only because there are going to come times during disasters, pandemics, bad weather, where you may need to reach out to something, and wet tablets don't really do well when there's water on the surface, so you're going to get panicky. At least if the ink runs, I've got the information firsthand, and I can rewrite it. There you go.
Good advice, as always. Chris often tells us to label things and write them down, and that is good advice. In this day of electronic stuff, sometimes we're not so good about writing things down, but it's a good idea. I'm sure you keep that notepad pretty secure, don't you, Chris?
Oh, it's secure. Trust me. It stays where it needs to be. I know where it's at all times.
Good.
Short of a handcuff on my wrist.
No, hope that doesn't happen. Hey, we got to go. Bill Bennett, I want to thank you for being with us from ENCO. Great advice and good disaster recovery information from ENCO. And I want to see how people implement this. And I look forward to hearing back from you about people implementing this kind of DR in the cloud.
Thanks, Kirk. It's been a hoot. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for coming on. Chris Tobin, homeless in New York City. Thank you for being with us, man.
It's a good time. Hotels are open. Why not? I just look. I'm homeless. I don't have anything. Not really. Come over here. Sign it. Thank you very much. It's crazy. Trust me, it's crazy. Who knew?
And hey, I wouldn't have thought to kid you about that until our last week's guest, Dan McQuillan, did. So.
I think it was great. All right. And I can't wait to see him. It's going to be fun. I'm going to say, look, I need some money. I'm homeless.
And here I am sheltering in place. By the way, coming up next week, we've got an interesting show. Rob Ashard from the UK is going to be our guest, talking about audio and audio for TV and some interesting things that they've been going through with this sheltering in place and trying to do television production and when they get back in and do more, big time television production. Rob has been on before from Radio Caroline. He's going to be on again. So that's going to be an interesting show. As for this show, we've been doing the work from home thing for years. Our show producer, Suncast, if you don't know it, he produces this show away from the control room. The control room's in New York. Suncast is not in New York. He's in Michigan himself. And so he does a great job of doing this whole show remotely. And then, of course, Chris and I, we're never, in the studio ourselves. We're in our own studios. So it's just it's a great experience. And, it's an honor to share those experiences and bring them to you. We got to run. Thanks a lot, Suncast. Thanks also to Arian, the founder of the GFQ network. And we got to go. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.